Tonight I'm going to read you some facts about the Titanic. I hope you enjoy, and I hope it helps you get some sleep. The RMS Titanic was the world's largest passenger ship when it entered service, measuring 269 meters in length and the largest man-made moving object on Earth. The largest passenger vessel is now the MS Allure of the Seas at 362 meters. The ship burned about 600 tons of coal a day, hand-shoveled into its furnaces by a team of 176 men. Almost 100 tons of ash were ejected into the sea each day. The ship's interiors were loosely inspired by those at the Ritz Hotel in London. Facilities on board included a gym, pool, Turkish bath, a kennel for first-class dogs, and a squash court. It even had its own on-board newspaper, the Atlantic Daily Bulletin. There were 20,000 bottles of beer on board, 1,500 bottles of wine, and 8,000 cigars, all for the use of first-class passengers. You could probably hear that motorbike outside. The Last Supper served to first-class passengers consisted of 11 courses. First-class passengers were given a music book containing 352 songs. Musicians on board were required to know them all in case requests were made. John Jacob Astor IV was the richest passenger on board, with a net worth of around $85 million, approximately $2 billion today, and went down with the ship. One legend claims that after the ship hit the iceberg, he quipped to a waiter, "I asked for what ice, but this is ridiculous." Another notable victim was Benjamin Guggenheim, an American businessman. Realizing that the ship was going down, he and his valet Victor Giglio reputedly changed into their evening wear while he remarked, "We've dressed up in our best and are prepared to go down like gentlemen." They were last spotted on deck chairs drinking brandy and smoking cigars. Noel Leslie, the Countess of Rothes, was also on board but survived. She is mentioned in an episode of Downton Abbey. "Isn't this terrible when you think how excited Lucy Rothes was at the prospect," remarks the Countess of Grantham when she hears of the disaster. 2 of the 9 dogs on board were rescued, a Pomeranian and a Pekingese. Numerous people held tickets for the journey but did not actually sail, including Milton S. Hershey, founder of the chocolate firm Guglielmo Marconi, and Alfred Gwynne Vanderbilt, who died on the RMS Lusitania 3 years later. Well, that was unfortunate. The last remaining survivor of the disaster, Melvina Dean, died on May 31st, 2009, aged 97. She was 2 months old at the time. The iceberg was spotted at 11:40 p.m. on April 14, 1912, by lookout Frederick Fleet, who proclaimed, "Iceberg right ahead." Fleet survived the disaster and was a lookout on the RMS Oceanic during the 20s, before serving in the Second World War. Pranksters placed a pair of binoculars on his grave in 2012 with a note, "Sorry they're 100 years too late." The The iceberg was around 100 feet tall and came from a glacier in Greenland. Just 37 seconds elapsed between the sighting of the iceberg and the collision. First Officer William McMaster Murdoch ordered the ship to turn, but it was too late to do so in time. It has been suggested that the ship would not have sunk if it hit the iceberg head-on. Murdoch went down with the ship. A memorial to him is found in his hometown of Dalbeattie in Kirkcudbrightshire in Scotland. Edward Smith, the ship's captain, also went down with the vessel. His last words were, "Well, boys, you've done your duty and done it well. I ask no more of you. I release you. You know the rule of the sea. It's every man for himself now, and God bless you." A statue of him can be seen in Lichfield, Staffordshire. The ship received 6 warnings about icebergs during the voyage. A lifeboat drill scheduled for April 14th was cancelled for unknown reasons. The ship broke in two at around 2:20 a.m. on April 15th and sunk, sending all remaining passengers into the ocean. The temperature would have been -2 degrees Celsius. Few would have survived longer than 15 minutes in the water, while around 1 in 5 would have died within 2 minutes from cold shock. Charles Jogan, however, the ship's baker, reportedly tread water for 2 hours before being rescued with little ill effects. He claimed he had not felt the cold due to the amount of whiskey he had drunk. 26 of those on board were honeymooning couples. Musicians played for 2 hours and 5 minutes as the ship sank. The SS Californian was criticized for ignoring the Titanic's distress signals. She was later sunk herself by a German submarine. The RMS Carpathia arrived at 4 a.m. and transported the survivors to New York. 40,000 greeted its arrival at Pier 54. Only 306 bodies were found. The dead were taken to Halifax, Nova Scotia. Its Maritime Museum has a dedicated section that includes a deck chair recovered from the wreck, mortuary bags and the shoes of an unknown victim. The wreck of the Titanic was discovered in 1985 and lies 370 miles off the coast of Newfoundland, around 12,500 feet below the surface. The marine dive specialist Deep Ocean Expeditions previously offered trips to the wreck using a mere submersible chartered from the Russian Academy of Sciences, with berths costing $59,000, but stopped offering them in 2012. The bow penetrated 18 meters into the seabed. Dozens of films and documentaries have been made about the disaster, the most controversial of which was commissioned by Joseph Goebbels in 1943. Its plot discredited British and American businessmen and features brave German passengers. The epilogue states, "The deaths of 1,500 people remain unatoned, forever a testament of Britain's endless quest for profit." James Cameron's 1997 effort is undoubtedly the most successful. It has grossed more than $2 billion and won 11 Oscars. The film's main theme song, "My Heart Will Go On" by Celine Dion, was the biggest selling single of 1998 and has been covered by Neil Diamond, Sarah Brightman, Kenny G, and Miss Piggy from the Muppets. The Titanic is the only ocean liner to be ever sunk by an iceberg. After hitting the iceberg, it took the Titanic 2 hours and 40 minutes to sink. Most lifeboats launched off the Titanic were not filled to capacity. The budget for the movie Titanic was higher than the Titanic itself. Four forward compartments could flood without the risk of the Titanic sinking. 6 did. The Titanic's fourth funnel was fake. It was added to make the ship look more powerful and symmetrical. The Japanese who survived the Titanic crash was called a coward in his country for not dying with the other passengers. The most expensive first-class suites in the Titanic were to have cost up to £870, which would be £75,156 today. 53% of the people on the Titanic could have survived using the lifeboats. Only 31% did. Not a single engineer out of the 30 made it off the Titanic. They stayed and kept the power on so that others could escape. The Titanic, or the iceberg that sank the Titanic, began its journey somewhere around 1000 BC. Ships today are more likely to encounter an iceberg than the Titanic was. Kate Winslet, who played in the movie Titanic, hated the song My Heart Will Go On and said it makes her feel like throwing up. It took 73 years to find the wreck of the Titanic. Kim Il-sung, founder of North Korea, was born on the day that the Titanic sank. 29 days after the Titanic sank, a movie about it was released. It featured an actress who was actually on the Titanic and survived. After the Titanic sank, the families of the band members were billed by White Star Line for the cost of the uniforms worn as the band members died. That's insane. A man who survived the sinking of a ship in 1871 was finally able to overcome his fears and decided to sail again in 1912. He died in the sinking of the Titanic. A priest on the Titanic refused to board a lifeboat twice. Instead, he stayed behind to hear confessions and give absolution to the people left on the ship. In 1898, 14 years before the Titanic sank, author Morgan Robertson wrote a book about an unsinkable ship called the Titan that crashed into an iceberg and sank. There's a conspiracy theory saying that the Titanic never sunk. Instead, it was her sister ship, the Olympic, and it was an insurance scam. A newly discovered species of rust-eating bacteria will have consumed the wreck of the Titanic within 20 years. James Cameron sought Hollywood funding for the movie Titanic, not because he wanted to make the movie, but because he wanted to dive to the shipwreck. estimated value of the cash, bonds, and jewellery carried by the Titanic's passengers was $6 million. The movie Titanic won 11 Oscars, but none for acting. The RMS Titanic was built in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Titanic 2 will be a close replica of the Titanic and is set to sail in 2018. I wonder will people actually buy tickets to go on that? I know I wouldn't. The Titanic crew had no binoculars, which may have helped them to see the iceberg. They were inside a locker and the key was lost. The Titanic's electrical plant was capable of producing more power than an average city power station at the time. A disproportionate number of men were left on board the Titanic because of a women and children first protocol followed while loading the lifeboats. I think that's it. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope it helps you get some sleep. Sweet dreams.